Hey everybody, happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are having a wonderful day, a great week. Welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam, Gunpla, and gaming. I am your host, Stephen, aka Midnight Hatter. Joining me as always, the Blue Gamer Gundam Explainer, Adam Blue. And tonight we have a very special guest, genuinely my favorite Gunpla YouTuber. I'm just going to throw that out here.
Nice.
Tonight
Good
we have
job.
Pencil Knights joining us. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. I'm happy to be here with you guys, and
Oh, yeah.
congratulations to the new baby. I know
Oh,
I
thank you.
yeah. I know them sleepless well, I haven't had a chance to partake in the sleepless nights yet, but I'm trying to.
Oh, well, best of luck to you both, you and
Yeah.
the missus. We were just talking for the benefit of those listening, we were just talking in the green room or pre-stream, that, you're are you just coming up on your one-year anniversary or, uh
April 27th made our 1-year anniversary.
Oh,
Nice.
congratulations.
Congrats.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, belated congratulations. That's so
Ah,
funny because that was the day after my daughter was born. It was,
Oh, weird.
she was born the 26th,
no
Interesting.
so
kidding.
that's so
There's some
funny,
energy
man.
with that somewhere.
Okay.
Something's clicking there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us again. I
Thank you
think
for having me.
I've name dropped you a few times on the channel, trying to sort of
Yeah.
manifest this talk into existence because you and I kind of roll in the same circles when it comes to Gunpla building, when it comes to the types of customizations that we both make, and so I'm a huge admirer of yours. For those,
Great.
for the benefit of those listening, can you give us like the sort of 10,000-foot view, like who you are, what you're about, and sort of introduce yourself?
All right. Well, I'm Pencil Knight, aka Irvin. That's my first name. So my background, I'm come from illustration. That's actually what I went to school for. Been drawing all my life, Power Rangers, all that good stuff.
Oh,
And
Nice.
at a certain point in middle school, I realized that as much as I loved illustration, I knew I couldn't really have a comfortable living situation with that because by then everything was pretty much done and the emergence of 3D started to
oh,
come out. And so I kind of did some course correction and went into both illustration and 3D. And then I joined the military, did 6 years, came out, found found a job up in Virginia, which allowed me to relocate from Miami, Florida to Virginia, and it's been a joy ever since. Um, Gundams. So my first introduction is pretty much most people's with Gundam Wings. Yeah, I was, Toonami. I was a Toonami kid and all that. And yep, so Wing Zero, all of the great ones. And at the time, I would build the models. I do some crude hand painting, but it got to a point where I realized that I wanted to have a collection, but I couldn't do that because I didn't have my own place. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna shelf this idea and come back to this when I have a house. And so fast forward to when I met my wife in 2018.
Yeah, don't get that one wrong.
Yeah, she's looking right at me. So I mentioned Gundam a couple times to my wife, and for our first Christmas together, I got to spend it with her family in North Carolina. She's originally
Oh,
from North Carolina,
oh, nice.
and then she purchased me the Perfect Grade Strike. That was my first Gundam back into getting back into the
getting into
swing of
Gundam.
things.
That's a
Oh,
hell of
that's
a
a good
Gundam.
one.
Like,
You'll really like this. At that time, I didn't know how to airbrush. I was always intimidated by it, even back in school of drawing and like I could do painting, oil paints, I could do all pastels, all that stuff, but I was just always intimidated with airbrushing, so I just never learned. And so since
same.
since she got me the Perfect Grade Strike, I was like, well, I gotta really do this justice. And so I
I get it.
started looking around online, and then I ran across a few creators. One in particular that caught my eye was Otaku Builder. And so from there, I kind of watched what he did. And initially, I was like, yeah, LEDs. I'm like, that's a lot. I'm like, I'd rather just paint it and be done with it. But he mentioned that the LEDs that come with the perfect grade strike are trash. I was being hard headed, saying to myself, they can't be that bad. And then when I actually got to see them, I'm like,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
not
this,
great.
this isn't gonna cut it. And so that's when I started purchasing LEDs. I started off with simply just doing the eyes and the thrusters, and then real basic, all you need to know really is, negative, positive, and that's all you really need to do. And from there, I was like, this is pretty fun. And then I got the additional striker packs because I think that was when Bandai had done they released those for the perfect grade because it
They
was
were
like
all
Type of
separate.
Prime. Yeah. And so once I got those, I decided, okay, well, let me light those up so that they can connect with the strike. And then it led into me working on the master grade strike because I was explaining to my wife, well, you got me the perfect grade. See, this is the master grade. And then it turned into, well, the strike got to have his rival, so let me build the Aegis. And then I was like, well, I got to have the Aegis friends, so I built all of the, you know, Buster, Duel, Blitz, and then it just turned into what I have now, so where I'm just building everything.
The whole
So,
seed gang, yeah. No, well, hey, well, first, before we go any further, thank you for your service, much
ah,
appreciated,
no problem.
and, yeah, so tell me, like, because I think of everyone we've talked to, you're one of the few people that, has kind of transitioned from, like, a traditional medium of 2D art to then 3D art to then, Gunpla, well, kind of with a little bit of crossover in the middle. How has the experience of, having, classical training in the 2D art space translated to what you're doing now?
Well, so I tell people all the time, well, I'm asked, as an animator, do you need to know how to draw? And I tell them you don't necessarily need to know, but it helps a lot. And for me, when it comes to modeling something, my illustration background, because I've, school drilled pretty much drills it into you, like understanding the form,
Fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals.
fundamentals, and yeah, it's the same thing, everything day out, day in, day out, day in, day. And so once you get to, let's just say, like the Dragon Zord, I wanted to build that in 3D, but obviously I don't have shots of it from all angles. So with that 2D background, I'm able to more or less assume and kind of guesstimate, okay, from the shape of this area, it should contour, or maybe it may fold, or it may do something, and it helps out a lot for those areas that you just naturally can't see, and then you'll have a full form. And so, and then with my current profession, it helps out tremendously, because there's certain fundamentals where like shadow, shape, size. I forget the other two, but all those elements help you to be able to form whatever it is you're trying to depict.
Yeah. Yeah, like,
Pretty good.
I always forget those terms too, like shape, contour, all that stuff. I'm obviously far from professional artist. I skipped straight to the end of the line, and which is why, I'm not any good at any of it. But, so you mentioned, you were a wing kid, but then you kind
Oh,
of, it
yeah.
sounds like you were very heavy into seed model kits, as opposed to
Yeah.
wing model kits, at least when you were kind of coming back into the hobby. So,
Yeah,
could
did
you
Seed kinda, like, creep up? Was that, like, the comeback,
Um,
Gundam?
a little bit. So I was in middle school when Wing came out, so I couldn't really purchase my own models. I got lucky with cousins or something like that, and I could kind of piggyback and get one with them.
And
But,
they were rare back then. I mean, I only ever found the Endless Waltz Ultron and the Endless Waltz Death Scythe near me, like,
really?
that was
Because
it.
because in Florida, like, they were everywhere, like, you go into
Oh,
malls, Kmart, like, everybody KB Toys, they
TV
everybody
time.
had that stuff.
That's
EB
wild.
yeah, everybody had so you could find them, it wasn't no problem. I mean, the only issue you probably ran into was, like, maybe repeat models, but, you
Well,
like, maybe
did
you might want the whole Gundam Wing set, but you're missing somebody and you can't find it.
oh, and
Yeah.
it's but did watching the show get you into the model kit thing, or was it how which one came first?
Oh, well, so back to my illustration
Yeah.
background, I've always loved armor and mechs. Like that was always
Sweet.
my thing. I don't get me wrong, I love Dragon Ball Z, but I always gravitated towards some type of armor, morph sequence, or mech. And
Yeah.
so from there,
All about the Zords, like
So,
exactly.
MMPR is Mighty Morphin your prime Rangers?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, same
yes,
here.
it is. I love those guys. I got to meet most of the team.
Oh,
So outside of Tui and Jason David
yeah.
Frank, I've met the
Oh,
rest of them.
wow.
RIP, man. That was that
Yep.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe that
I
Yeah.
know.
when we lost him.
But
Um,
but that oh, yeah, so back yeah, okay, you were gonna explain with the illustration, the armor, and the mechs.
right.
So, is it where that, I guess, led to building a model kinda satisfied that?
What so I think once Gundam Wing made landfall in the US, I think that was the perfect way to scratch that itch of wanting to build because
Oh,
Transformers, I'm in love with those also, but
okay.
it was just something about being able to just put it together from scratch. It just had an extra feeling to it. And so
Ownership over yeah.
and with Gundam Seed, at the time of Gundam Seed, by that point I was in high school, and at that point I was working at Wendy's, so I was actually able to save money and I could
Yeah,
like order one online, like a nicer model. It wasn't like one of the no grades. Well, I mean, technically it was still a no grade, but it was a nicer no grade. And then
yeah.
so I bought those two and then that was when I stopped. And I didn't touch a model until 28
18?
2018 was when I was given the model, but I didn't actually touch it until 2019.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, I think I bought a perfect grade Zeta Gundam in 2018, and I haven't touched it yet, so that's
Blasphemous.
Hmm.
Actually, the one perfect grid I did buy, the Unleashed, I ended up building it, like, over those next 2 weeks. That was awesome.
I have it and it's looking at me, but
Ah,
Imma get to it. Imma get to it. I may
exactly
do a
right.
kit bash with it or something.
oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So then what, after you got back into the hobby, what kind of drove you to start content creation?
Well, it's my wife is probably the driving force. She pretty much had a foot on my neck about, "You need to do something with this," because it started out with, I was just happy with building the models. And then I wanted to challenge myself with, well, let me not just do just the eyes and the thrusters. Let me see if I can recreate the gimmicks from the TV shows while maintaining full articulation with the models because I'm not a fan of statues. I'm really not a fan of
Same.
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I like
So
articulated action figures.
there you go. And
Yeah.
so I started, challenging myself, and then I would build a model, and then I build another. And one day, there's a comic book store called Third Eye Comics in the area. I went there,
I think I've
and
been there with my little brother, actually.
mm, so they do sell Gundam models, but I was kind of talking with the shopkeep, and he was familiar with Gundams, and I kind of showed him some of my LED work, and he mentioned to me about IPMS, and I didn't know what it was, and he was like, yeah, he's like, "Well, if that's your first model, you should really try out for that." And so I went to IPMS, and then that's when the same repeat questions kept happening. And even on social media, when I would post my work, it's like, how are you doing that? How are
Yeah,
you
what
doing that?
what battery are you using? What's the yeah.
And so from there, the wife was saying, "Well, you need to have a YouTube channel." And I actually was completely against the idea of it because I wanted to just build and just be happy building. But I gave it a try. My first few videos, they didn't do as well, but when the
They never
Caliban
did.
came out, I think that one was a game changer because I was able to get a copy of it, like, the moment it made landfall in California, and so, and I really
Oh,
love that model, and so I built it, and I saw online that, most people had the LED strips in the chip where it does the whole permit, like, flicker up the body, and so I wanted to just add a little bit extra to my model, and I noticed nobody was working on the broom, and so I was
yeah.
like, "Okay, boom." And so from there, I wanted to have my Caliban match what it did in the show, and then that video had just took off. I was getting, like, my phone just kept going off, doom, 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 doom.
Yeah.
It was just, and then I was like, "Oh wow, people are really digging this." I'm like, and so I completely made a 180. I went from like, I don't really care about YouTube, and crazy thing enough, throughout the build of the Caliban, I was cursing to the clouds, like, "I'm tired of this. I don't it sucks trying to record and build," and then it took off, and then I was like, "Okay, well, I'll give it another try," and then so I
Nice.
just
A
kept it going.
and so that Calibarn video is sitting I just pulled up the screen share, it's sitting at 142,000 views from last year, right?
That's insane.
That's
That's
congratulate that's
Yeah, I
awesome,
know.
and,
Thank you.
you
That
know,
that was my best video. That was,
that well, and I think that there's like Witch from Mercury kits in general, with the exclusion of the full mechanics, because that one actually, I think who is it? Cosmos makes like an LED set for it.
yes.
The Witch from Mercury sets were like a big fumble to me as far as like the gimmicks go, because
Yeah.
they all had like the chest like armor, but it was all stickers. Like th- there was no LEDs, there was no like I don't know if you remember back in the day the Transformers that like when you would rub the little black part, it would change from Decepticon to Autobot, like
Yes, I
that
do.
material, like
Mhm.
that thermal material. I was like, "Dude, if they don't make the aerial that thermal material where you can rub it with your thumb and then the lights come out, then
Yeah.
it's a waste." So, I think that a lot of people were wanting to do this, and you are I mean, as far as I know, the only English speaking YouTuber that did it. So, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like, I would, go online and get inspiration from different builders. Duckfly is he's a really Taiwanese, really talented builder, and you know, what was funny, it just so happened that both me and him was building it at the same time, and we would, like, kind of not go in depth comment on each other's work, but just kind of, I was like, it was like, "Yeah, I see you over there," and I was like,
Mutual
"Oh,
respect.
Duckfly knows me." And so, yeah, and so I just kept building, and I really at least try to pride myself to do something that I know no one else is doing, because it's to I guess to come up with the ideas that I have that for the different builds that I make, there has to be some type of like fun and intrigue with the model, like some type of challenge. And so yeah, that's kind of like the driving force for me to like come up with these ideas. So
Yeah, like a gimmick that really stands out that's, that no one else is out here doing, which and so I think that's a large part of why I got into LEDs as well was, I see people out here airbrushing, I see people doing fantastic weathering jobs, and I'm like, I mean, that's cool to me, like, I their work is fantastic. I just, maybe it's like the little rebel in me, like, I wanna do something different, like, I wanna do something that nobody else is
Yeah.
doing.
And
Um
another thing, I feel like the LED adds more of that gimmick and function, to, like, buying a badass action figure, and while airbrushing is awesome, that's just more for the look and not necessarily part of its gimmick, you know what I mean? So, that's where for me, like, as much as it's cool to paint little details, and stuff like that, the gimmicks, the articulation, I really like.
So, in the beginning with the LEDs, I wanted to challenge myself, but then it got to the point where I was just adding LEDs for the sake of it, and it didn't really
Oh,
have a direction. And
yeah.
then I think once I hit Caliban, that's when I started narrowing my focus onto, okay, what makes sense or what would actually work with the kit instead of it just, lighting up, for the sake of lighting up. And then that's when I got into the idea of the gimmick and having it
and switching.
be able to do exactly what it does in the TV show.
Exactly. And one of the other things that you do that I admire is, is hiding the gimmick in the kit itself, because this is something that, like, obviously you can't see it from the screen share, but like with the narrative Gundam, the battery is installed on the back of the shield. It's like everything you've done is like integrated into the kit. There's no like stand or something. There's no like external power source that you have connected to it. Everything is contained within it. So it's like I think that that's probably the thing that appeals to me the most about your work, is that it's still fully articulated, still has all of its original gimmicks. It just has the LEDs on top of it, and they're fully integrated and hidden in the kit. Like, there's no wires dangling out, anything like that. I'm trying to copy your wire work because it's so clean. Like, especially when I see like the torso come together and you've got like a coil of wires coming out of one leg and then another, and they oh man, that's uh,
So what helped me at least get to that point, I'll never forget it. It was the first IPMS I went to, and at this time, I think I made the whole seed crew, but at the time, I would have my wire work wasn't the cleanest, and then I would have the wire come out of the body and go into an external power source. So you have this nice looking model, but you have this, battery that's just hanging off the side. And at my first IPMS, when it came to time to judge, it was my dual master grade dual Gundam. They love what I did with it. It's just they dinged me on just the battery being out.
mm.
And it crushed me to the core, and from then on, my mission was like, all of this stuff has to be hidden. It can't be shown at
Interesting.
all,
That
and
that
so
was the moment. Um,
and it became
so
a bit of an obsession a little bit, like, I'm very like, I have to hide the cables, like and
Yeah.
even if I can't hide the cables, I'll try to make them
look like they're
hide them
part.
in plain sight, make them part of the actual build to where
Yeah.
you wouldn't think twice about, "Oh, that's actually the power source." Like, with the Forbidden Gundam, it's really cool that it has those long tubes that go from the main body to the shields. I just
Yeah,
ran the wires through there. It was like I'm like, "Oh, that's just perfect."
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Instead of hiding it in the hinge and worry about the hinge potentially, like, creating a short or pinching it, I was like, "Oh, this is just perfect."
That
So
that was the first of your models that I saw in person, was the Forbidden, and I was like, "This is."
Oh,
I mean, so this was at the Hobby Town, just
the
the Hobby Town
G
model contest, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Dude, if this doesn't place, then like, what are we even doing here?" This is
It was some
because
fierce competition in there, so, I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in there. I mean, I started, second guessing myself. I'm like, "Crap." I'm
same
like,
here,
they
man.
might see this mistake I made on the Forbidden, because and I'll start thinking about all of the mistakes. I'm like, 'cause there was some really, really talented individuals in there. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what keeps me on my toes. I see that stuff and I'm like, "Okay, I gotta go home and get to work."
Yeah. No, there's no sleeping with Ricky Hoskin in your backyard. Um,
Yeah, nicest dude ever.
oh,
Oh,
he's so
that man is a pure monster. The way he can just produce it's like he prints them. I'm like, it's
it's
such a high
nuts.
quality. I'm like, when do you have time? And then to my understanding, he has a family. I'm like, when do you have the time? I mean, I'm
And I think he
struggling
just
with the
rebuilt his kitchen from scratch, and he's still posting. Like, I'm like, "What are you doing?"
I'm struggling with the what 5 hours of daylight I have once I get off work to do what I could do. I have to feed the dogs, eat food, somewhere get a shower in there, all that good stuff.
Right. Well, so and on that note, like another IPMS member, tell me about that because, like, obviously having Nick on and talking IPMS the last few months, the reception of IPMS members to Gundam builders as opposed to like traditional military modelers, it's kind of hit and miss. So, how was your chapter of IPMS, up in your area? How did they receive you when you first joined them?
So the first IPMS I went to was the Odio where I met Nick for the first time. We didn't have an in-depth talk, but I did meet him because at that point he had his Death Scythe on display. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. And
That was pretty
he
cool.
also had his Phoenix, I believe. Also, it was a HD Phoenix. But it was nice in that environment because I actually got to see more people like me because um so that year when I first was introduced to that IPMS, for that whole year I was like IPMS crazy. So I kept going to whatever IPMS I could find that was close enough. So I'd go to North Carolina or I'd go to up in Maryland. I'd go to them all. And I noticed that the Gundam crowd, it waxes and wanes depending on where you go. And there are certain competitions where, at the time I just stopped going to those because there was no one there for the Gundam. It was just pretty much
Mm.
everything else. And I'm like, well, this is no fun.
Yeah.
And so I would just constantly look forward to the February show to where I get the big crowd. And
Oh, that's
so
a huge show, and I mean, it was a huge show before, like, Gundam took off, and, like, now the Gundam crew has, like, taken over that small section,
yeah,
which is wild. I mean, there's not a lot of people that do the kind of work that Nick does to build that kind of community and get people to show up. So, and again, folks like you, folks like Gelgu guy who travel to be there is like it's a huge deal. Like that means a lot to us.
Nick, so whenever I see something I like, or at least, I in my head, I can start to create a bit of a like, I gotta be one step ahead of him. So Nick had, I think that year, like I say, he had the Death Site, and I was like, I got to come back with something better. And then I think the following year, he had made the Gujan, and that thing was really good. And I'm like, damn it, okay, I got to come with something even better than that. So, and it's not just Nick, but it's like, it's everybody. Like if I see something that's really cool, like for instance, what you did with the V8 when I saw you like setting up the wire and everything for it. So one thing about me, I love when people take the, I guess you could say, the not so popular models and bring them to life in the way that you did with that with the V8's cannon. I was like, I love that, and I'm like, that is cool. That
I'm
I,
trying,
I love
man.
that kind of stuff.
Hey, thank you. And honestly, same thing as you, where it's like the only reason I was even thinking about it was because with the backpack and like the charging coil in the backpack, I was like, oh, it's got a cable that comes around to the gun, so like I can put the wires to the LED through that, and it's like what's crazy is that it starts actually working the way that the real mobile suit does.
Exactly.
It's like the gun is being charged by the backpack, which is cool.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's a big the Mercurius and V8. I'm committed to finishing those to this year where it's like,
That's cool.
and I'm, you know, so I know you and I have talked about this privately, but like obviously I'm really big into using microcontrollers and like Arduino to try and make these things dynamic because so all of your switches on like the narrative and on the Calibarn have been what do you call it? Like analog, right? Where it's like you
Yes.
got like a three position switch.
Yes. So I haven't had a formal education in when you get into the like LED controllers. So that I have to learn. So with my builds, they're very basic. I like to
Wait, don't sell them short. There's nothing basic about
oh I like to compare myself to Zenitsu from Demon Slayer. Like he has that one move, but he's perfected that one move. And he can, even though he has that one move, he can achieve whatever goal it is he's trying to do off that one move. And I kind of liken myself to that. So
Yeah.
like I said, I don't know all of the tricks and everything with the controllers, which I hope to learn some of it from you, Steven. But
Likewise, I know that you and I hope that this is the beginning of a long and storied
oh yeah,
friendship in in
oh yeah.
LEDs.
But for now, it's just the way I wire is it's very, to me it's very simplistic, and it's easy for anyone to follow along, or if they wanted to even get into it. What I do, it's the very basics of, you just need to know what a negative and a positive is, and then from there it's just, you just keep building upon it. So, usually when people would ask me how can they get into it, I'd say, start with an entry grade. And I always tell them start with the eyes and the thrusters. From there, then, that's when the creativity starts to kick in, and then you want to push and do other things. And then from there, then you'll be, doing things better than I am.
I mean, it's amazing how talented you can become in a short period of time when you focus on what is it? So it's the Bruce Lee quote, right? Where it's like, "I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times, not 1,000 different kicks." So
Yes.
like, and to be honest with you, as far as working with LEDs and batteries and electronics, yeah, I love telling this story because, I was committed to learning how to airbrush and doing all the, traditionals. I say traditional, but, that kind of customization. But after my first daughter was born, I didn't have time to be like cleaning out an airbrush and like, oh, I have to wait. Is the temperature just right? Is the humidity okay that I can actually go out and airbrush? I was like, if I'm gonna do my hobby, I've got to be able to do it in 30 minutes while she's napping and like so
Yes.
LEDs make perfect sense, and so as intimidating as it was to start, once I got into it, I was like, "This is so much easier than anything I was doing painting-wise," and then, like and I can do it in, like, short bursts as opposed to having to commit, a solid 2 hours to doing one thing. So, yeah, I mean, the idea that your content makes it more accessible to people because I know that there's a lot of other people out there that, are intimidated by starting out, and so just breaking down those barriers.
Yeah, like I said, I was also, but again, once I saw how it looked, I was like, "No, I can't do this. I could do better than this."
Yeah.
But
Hey,
yeah.
have you built the oh, why do I keep the Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom? That's the it's
Um,
like,
I
yeah, the
so I have not, and this may this may anger some people, but I'm not the biggest fan of it. It has a lot of it's very exaggerated, and there's
yeah.
a lot of angles, and you could call me old fashioned. Like, you know, like I I would gravitate more towards the perfect grade strike freedom with the more anime inline proportions.
Mhm.
Um yeah, yeah, the master grade extreme, I haven't built it. It just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, it is kind of a more of an extreme departure than I usually like for my, suits because I'm the type where I do the thing where I do a straight build, but I do as many details and then top coat, whatever. But I think you might be interested in the Master Grade Extreme because, for instance, it does a weird
Trying to
thing where
get
it
me.
has these translucent red, the
I
red on the
saw those.
shoulders,
Mhm.
and I'm like, wait a minute, that's LED bait right
So
there.
it's funny you mentioned that. So when I first started doing LEDs, I was limited to translucent areas like what you just pointed out. So if it
Yeah.
had it, then I was like, okay, I could do LEDs with it. But then it got to a point where, you know, they models just didn't certain models just didn't have it in certain areas. And then that's kind of what
Especially older
precipitated
kids.
older kits. And that's kind of
Mhm.
what got me into before I started using resin, I would just use some BSI glue, like for like let's say a mono eye on the tear, like I just drill a hole and I just take a little dot of glue and like kind of place it on the eye and let it cure, and then I have a translucent eye. And I would do that for various parts, and it would work, but it was very crude. And then once again, my wife introduced me into because she uses it for herself, UV resin.
Mm,
And
there we go.
UV res, I can tell you right now, that is like the MVP of my builds. Like, because in the past, like if I had to glue wires into specific areas, unless I had the activator to make it cure immediately, I would be, sitting there just like this, holding it, waiting for it to cure, waiting for it to cure. And if I put too much glue on it, it takes even longer. And so like one day I seen it with the UV resin, and then yeah, I tried it out, and I was like, "This is amazing!" I'm like, it just dries instantly, with a UV light. I'm like, "This is just golden." And then from then on, I just kept using. I use it all the time. The only time I actually use glue is if it's an area where you can't shine UV light, and you actually have to use glue. That's probably the only time I use
Yeah.
glue. But I use UV resin for almost everything. Mhm.
That's
To
that.
make translucent parts, to even make parts, or just to use it as a way to keep cables and keep them down in specific areas in the model.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
mean,
that
even
kind of goes.
protecting circuits, like if you soldered something and then you cure it with some resin on top to prevent it from, getting jostled or unhooked.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that was another thing with when you're choosing your suit, and so it doesn't really matter that it has. You can really go for the suit you want and just make it work. Now
I'm at a point where I can just do
that's cool.
anything to it because, and my tools and techniques just have grown over time to where even today, I'll learn something that I didn't know that may have been like a huge game changer. Like for instance, when I was building the narrative series, to build that Gundam 3 times in a row, I learned so many tricks on streamlining, whereas the first narrative, it took time to build it, whereas when I got to the C packs, it just came together so fast because I was like, "Oh, if I do this or I do this." So it was almost like I got 3 tries at trying to do something, and
Speed
then
building.
yeah, I would take those skills on to the next model, and then I would always learn something new every single time.
That's cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with that in mind, like, since you're not limited by the kit that you're operating on, what is your process for selecting, like, "Okay, that's something that I need to light up. That's something that, like, what do
Hmm.
you look for in terms of build construction or gimmicks where it's like, "That's something I wanna install LEDs in?"
So naturally, my favorite type of Gundam or mobile suit are usually the boxy guys. So the big boys. So Virtue, with it being my first video, I was in love with Virtue. Like, just I love the idea of, it's the equivalent of two toys. It's two
Oh yeah.
Gundams. Like,
It is.
Is
and
that a gimmick?
growing up, so I love Transformers, but what was even better than Transformers was triple changes because I was like, that's 3 toys in one. So, I mean, so most when it comes to suit selection, I would gravitate mostly to the big ones because there's so much room to really just do anything, and because they're so big, you can actually have internal batteries rather than have them external. And so, it plays to the, the weaknesses that's inherent to, like, wiring.
Oh yeah.
So, whereas you got models like the Caliban, like, they're like a skeleton, so it's, like, really difficult to hide something with that. It could be done, but it's just very hard versus something big, it takes no work at all.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've said before, like I'm a huge fan. I'm so sad that they discontinued it, but the RE100 line, which was basically
Mm.
like a
Oh,
high
yeah.
grade, but in 1/100 scale, because those are basically just big empty cavities. You could stuff them with as many wires and whatever you wanted to. Um,
So, I never got to partake in the RE100s. I wanna say I knew of them when I got back into Gundam, but I never got to partake in them. However, I do know what you mean because, like, with older models, like the HGT Aaron, there's so much hollow space, I was able to just do whatever it is I wanted to do. Now, with Bandai, with the improvements in technology it's a great thing for the build experience for people. For me, it's almost like a gift and a curse because you have high grades that almost have full skeletons that make it harder to hide cables because now I have to modify the skeleton to be able to snake these wires through, whereas before it was just hollow space, like you said. I could just throw it in there and forget about it. Now I have to be very careful not to compromise the part to where I can't use it anymore. So it's kind of like a gift and a curse with the improvements and whatnot.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, that was, one of the more challenging ones that I did was and this was just the eyes, like, obviously, nothing as crazy as you've done, but, like, just putting in an LED in the eyes of the, RG, RX-78 2.0. I mean, the
Mm.
fact that first, they don't even give you translucent parts for the eyes, I had to cast those in resin. And then, obviously, the real grades have like a full internal skeleton. I mean, there was nothing I could do, so I ended up making them a wireless LED and like stashing the induction coil in the backpack. So, um, but you got to do what you got to do.
Believe it or not, I haven't built a real grade yet. I have some, but I haven't built one since I got back into
Oh, well,
uh,
which ones are sitting in your backlog right now?
real grade. So I do have the Wing Gundam. It's sitting there. I do have the God Gundam or Burning Gundam. I have him. I think I have a Mark II Gundam and the Justice. I think that's
The
yeah.
Justice is a cool one, and that's another one that, like, I'm trying to figure out how to do the LEDs in that one too because again,
That
it
thing is a fun time, like, I can't wait to get to it. You
oh,
already beat me.
yeah. Well, hey, shout out to, Ultronymous, one of my, supporters, he got it for me, and so I have it sitting on my desk here, and I've got, like, I've got the head where I'm like, "Okay, well, how am I gonna get a blue LED up in the horn part and, like, the green LEDs in the eyes?" And so but
Well,
that's why I've been watching your videos. I'm like, "Okay, so how is he doing?" Especially, like, for a part like that horn, you know, you kind of have to shine the light from, like, below and shine it up the, the acrylic part.
y so here's a trick that I've came across, with the Strike Freedom. So I ran into a similar issue where his the eyes are yellow, but the head camera's blue, and so what I did was, I recast like that section in resin, and then I took and painted the eyes yellow and painted the cameras blue and just used a white light. So when it pipes through, I get both colors. So what you just described, that's how I would approach that.
That's probably the way I gotta do it then.
Just recast that part and then you just paint it whatever colors you need it, and then you just run a white light, and you're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that it's funny because that's kinda how the Real Grade 2.0 worked, is because it's got, like, red cameras and yellow eyes, and just
Mm,
putting the yellow LED in, because I cast the eyes in yellow resin, like, I just added a couple drops of yellow alcohol ink, but
mm.
the camera is actually already a red piece, and the light kind of refracted throughout the skull, if you will, and lit up the red parts, and it was they were so opaque enough, I guess, that they shine red, so I was like, "Hey, it works out, accidental success." But no, I think that would be my next challenge to you would be like, "Okay, let's see you do this with a real grade." Trying to
So
thread those needles.
so I do have one real grade that I will make it my business to build it this year. It's the real grade unicorn,
Ooh.
and it's from the Gundam base, um, in, Tokyo, in Diver City.
I was about to
So
say, you made the trip to the Holy Land, so,
yeah, 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 last year, the main reason we were there, it goes back into animation. Me and my wife was actually there for animation conference, SIGGRAPH, and well, there's a SIGGRAPH that's in the US, and then there's SIGGRAPH Asia, and so we usually go to the SIGGRAPH in the US, but SIGGRAPH, it kind of bounces around, and for SIGGRAPH Asia, it just so happened to land in Japan. And at the time, I was still upset with myself because that was the same year they took down the RX,
yeah,
and I didn't get a chance to see it. So when I saw that they had that conference, I was like, okay, well, we can, use the first week on the conference, and then we can have the second week to just do whatever. And so we went over there, and surprisingly, inside of the Gundam base, like, there's no models in there I really wanna buy buy because it's pretty much the commercial stuff,
yeah,
but the unicorn itself, because it's the same one that's outside with the base and the specific decals, I said, "I'll grab that," and, as a keepsake so I can, build it to commemorate the trip there. And so fast forward to a few weeks ago, well, I'll put it like this: since we've been back, that's kind of all my wife, me and the wife would talk about is how much fun we had, and
yeah,
so we decided that we're going to try and go back again in December at the same time frame. And when I
nice.
go, what I like to do is have that unicorn already built with the LEDs, and then I just go back to Diver City and then take a picture with
Get
the
that
big
shot.
Gundam with the actual unicorn
That's
lit
neat.
up in the same way. So that's my goal for this year, is to build that guy.
That
It's a
is
real
a serious
great.
challenge because, I mean, yeah, I
Yeah, you
mean,
know what? The real grade, full armor unicorn was my first Gundam model kit.
That's a
And
lot
I
of
didn't even really know what it was. That's the weird thing. I know everyone talks
fun.
about the tsunami thing, and I just missed that. But yeah, when I went to GameStop, what, 5, 6 years ago, I forget how long ago, and I saw that real grade, I didn't know what it was. I was like, "This looks cool," and nothing has been as fun to build since,
you're
I'll
So
still
say.
chasing that first hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I got back into building models and I learned what real grades were, I heard nothing but horror stories from people, which kind of made me hesitant on purchasing one, because I would just hear like real grade syndrome to the inner skeleton, how it wears out over time. At least for me, I just kept hearing horror stories to where I just didn't touch them. And then you had, I think, who was the first one? Was it Wing Gundam, or well, I guess where they started to update the skeleton, or I guess they were just better, and
Yeah, because they don't even do, like, because it used to be that they had the whole internal frame was just on one
like
runner, and
pre-built.
you snap the whole thing pre-built out and then put the armor on, but they've gotten away from that now, where it's like, I don't know which model started it, but you're right, there was, like, I think it was, like, whatever the 15th model was, It might have actually been the Justice now that I'm thinking about it.
See, I've heard horror stories with the Justice. I just like the Justice so much to where I just was like, I don't care. I'll make it work because I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of cases, a little bit of paint tightens up the model to where it won't come apart.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know most horror stories, these are like out of box builds, and like, oh, it's not the hips are not tight enough, or it's not strong enough, and I'm like, well, just throw some paint on it, and yeah,
Hey,
they're
it's a model,
stressing it.
not an action figure. Like, you gotta customize it a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, the Zeta Gundam's my favorite, and, like, I broke my first real grade. I had to buy a second real grade Zeta because I completely ruined the first one because of, like, that same whole thing with the inner frame and just the transforming gimmick makes it
Yeah,
so,
that's
fragile.
So with the Zeta, I've heard he has the crown of horror stories I've heard.
yeah.
Everybody says it's a grenade. Like that's all I hear from everybody. That kit gets a lot of hate. I thought
Not
about
that bad.
I thought about grabbing one just to see if it was really what they said it was because like I've built some of the older double O kits and they're fine. You just give them some love and attention, and they're fine. You don't have to really worry about pieces breaking or they're not tight or because they use ball joints instead of poly caps, things like that.
Yeah, the problem with the Zeta, and I think it's like this with a lot of Zetas, is its chest and head structure. Because when you transform it, the head moves down
It
into the
drops
chest
down.
cavity. And because of that, you have the almost kind of the base area that all of the weighted pieces hang on to. And so
Mhm.
anytime you're picking up and manipulating it, you could be so it's not like a grenade that it falls apart, but it's more of because of its transforming gimmicks, it's hard to manage until you get it to where you want. But I would say, yeah, with the real grades, it's interesting because when I think real grade, I don't even think customizing. For me, the real grade is like you're just building this huge puzzle. But then it's like with the high grades and everything else, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, detail that, whatever. But do you feel that way at all about real grades, or to you, do real grades just seem like any other kit?
At Irvin today sees real grades like any other kid. At the
Yeah,
time, they just seemed like trouble when I first got back into it, and I just was like,
very
"Yeah,
mechanical.
let
Yeah.
me go this way where, I'm familiar with this." So
No, that makes sense because yeah, that's how I've always felt about it. But yeah, like we were talking about where with the UV resin you could do whatever you want. Yeah, pretty much you could even take your table and make it into a kit. I'm sure. I'm sure.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, we were talking earlier before the show started about, obviously, you're a 3D animator by trade, and so I asked you a little bit about 3D printing. Now, obviously, for guys in our circles, that's kind of considered cheating. But can you tell me about what your experience has been like, as far as 3D printing for Gunpla?
Alright, well, 3D printing, it is very fun. I do, at least with my builds, I try my best to not have to go that route because I understand the logistics of, those things are not cheap and it can become very expensive. So, but with 3D printing, for me, it's it becomes necessary with you know you don't want to. I guess the best way for me to say it is I try not to limit my creativity with what comes in the box. If there's an idea I can see, but the kit just can't keep up with it, other measures have to be taken to kind of achieve that goal. So that's kind of how I see 3D printing. I mean, if you're building the model from scratch, like you model it and everything, that's not cheating. To me, cheating would probably be the equivalent of you get the file from someone else and then you just print it. I mean, if you build it yourself and there's I mean, to me
Yeah,
that there's no difference than you actually building it by hand. if
Yeah.
you're building, because that's all
The
3D
piece is already
modeling
there.
is.
The piece is there for you to snap together. Yeah, I kinda agree with that with 3D printing. Even if you just got the file, sometimes even if you print it, you gotta still maybe
It's
sand
still
it
some work.
potentially, make
I
it
mean,
look like
that's
it matches, maybe color it, and it's not like I could be like, I'm not good at making a good custom, so you know what? I'm just gonna 3D print and I'm gonna win because it's not gonna work. It's
No.
still hard.
and
It's
you
still a
get
lot of work.
sniffed out pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the topic comes up on my Discord all the time. People are like, "Oh, well, you can just grab a game asset and print something out of GBO2," and it's like, video game assets are not the same thing as like a well-engineered 3D print piece, and like,
Exactly.
they take a lot of work before there's something that you can actually use in
Right.
any reasonable capacity.
So
Funny
for
because
me,
it sounds like we're talking about AI tools because it's almost like the same thing, you know?
so for me, but like you were saying, when it came to the Strike Freedom, the wings, I had to 3D print those from scratch, and it took me like 50 iterations before I actually got the correct fit that I needed. So it
Mhm.
Yeah.
so it's not as, it's not cheating. It's the equivalent of, you just molding clay with your hands, instead of clay in your hands, you're doing it in a 3D environment.
Yeah. Now, did you print it in translucent resin, or did you print it, like, in standard resin and then make a UV resin cast, like, in silicone?
For the wings,
Yeah.
um, so this is a trick I kind of picked up over time, and I've evolved it a little bit. But so I used regular resin, but for the areas where where the LED is supposed to shine through, I left that area empty, and what I did was I took some masking tape, put it over that area, and then took some resin and kind of let it fill into the empty space, and then cured it, and then just remove the tape, and then you got a clean translucent part.
And it's already installed, like, you don't have to, like, it's already fixed in place.
And then I just went back, sprayed some white acrylic to diffuse it, and boom. So
That's awesome.
that's how I went about it. And because in the past, like I was saying, I used to use glue to create.
Yeah.
Like I would like, if, like, let's say it was some eyes, I would actually take the time to drill the hole in the eyes, carve them with a hobby knife to get them as straight as I can get them,
Roughly eye-shaped.
and then I would apply the glue. Well, I put some tape over the open area, and then put glue on the back, and then remove
Mm.
the masking out afterwards. And, like I said, it wasn't the best, but it was able to achieve what I needed to do. But now I've got a more refined process, and like, again, UV resin, I would say, is the MVP, and my electric engraver would be the second MVP. That
Oh,
thing that thing is awesome.
Nice. Well, dude, thank you so much for sharing all this. I got,
yeah.
we're almost here at time. But I do want to share. Obviously, you've got a video dropping on Friday, the follow up of the Strike Freedom, which I'm looking forward to it personally, just because you've been posting the progress over on Instagram, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, and seeing you overcome some setbacks, I think is going to be uh beneficial to people, because I think that a lot of people in our space typically, like, you see the finished product, you see the perfection, and you're like, wow, how did they ever arrive at that? Not a lot of people get to see the fumbles, and so I
Process.
appreciate you showing that.
Yeah.
So, well, first off, in the video, anybody that's interested in UV resin, I would say for this build, I really took resin to the extreme of what you can actually use it for. So there's a lot of fun, like, little trinkets you can just take from what I've done and apply them in whatever way you see fit for you, for any type of build that you may have. But with the issues that I ran into with the LED blowout, so I was partially curious and n overestimated or underestimated how powerful that the voltage would be from the new power supply I had purchased. Um, and yeah, I plugged it up and I mean, all you heard was pop, 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 and you see the lights come on and then they slowly flicker down, and then they went off. And I want to say subconsciously, I knew not to plug up the backpacks because the Proud Defender and the Strike Freedoms backpack, those are completed, but I didn't plug them up to the main body. I just was like, let me test this out on the main body. I didn't think it would kill it, but subconsciously I knew not to do it to the other two backpacks. But yeah, I was in a panic for at least 3 to 5 minutes trying to figure out like crap. I even considered them like, is this the end of this project? And then, I remembered that the way I build LED models now is it's different from how I used to build them in the past. And currently, I every build that I make, I build it to be separated if you need to conduct maintenance on a specific limb or something. In this case, I had to take the whole thing apart, which it was entirely doable. And I actually was able to break it down that day to the key areas where all of the LEDs popped. And then the next day, I was able to restore 50% of the model. And I actually could have finished the entire thing in that one day, but I had ran out of LEDs. So I had to wait for yeah, I was at the mercy of the post office. And then because of the holiday, I was like, crap. I'm like, if I could have just got it in one day sooner, because the LEDs didn't show up till Tuesday, and then I pulled an all-nighter to finish off the rest of it. But yeah, yeah, I was heartbroken. I could smell the burning from the model, and even when I was cracking open the model to get to the innards, some areas were so compact to where when I opened them, it was like a huge whiff of burnt wires just came out. I was like, "Crap." I'm like, "This is
Wow.
bad."
But none of the plastic was damaged or anything like that? It was
No,
pretty
no,
well
the
contained?
plastic the plastic wasn't damaged. The wires were still working. One silver lining with the whole situation, so the controllers, the switches that I have installed in the model, so the disruptor cannon, the abdomen cannon, and the rail guns, I have them on individual switches, and they were set in the off position. They didn't burn out because they were off. Because once
Okay.
I plugged it up and checked it, they actually came on. Everything else was still blown, but they still worked. And going forward, I'm like, I know now. I mean, by default, I just kept it off, but now I know to make it my business to make sure everything's turned off
I
in
mean,
the
this
event
y
something like
you're
that
thinking
happens.
like an actual Gundam engineer at this point. Like, you're no longer just modeling kits, you're designing actual machines of war.
I'm just having fun with it. I see something on TV and I'm like, I think I can make that happen, and that's all I think I'm doing. But hey, I do appreciate that. I've been told that a couple times. One could hope. One could hope.
I mean, these are baby steps. It's like crawl, walk, run. I expect to see some, like, some servo motors and stuff in your future for sure.
See, I'm trying not to get too far away. I mean, when I got back into modeling, I got into it saying I'm gonna stick in the realm of modeling, paint, build, and that's it.
Nope.
Then here we go into LEDs, and then here we go into 3D printing, and that I'm like,
Fate
I
has
can't.
other plans, man.
It is. I can't take on. So I've been asked a couple times. I should get into cosplay designing, cosplay, and I tell everyone the same thing. I just can't because I would take that to the extreme that I do these models, and then I really wouldn't have no time for anything. And I'm like, "No, I'll just be a casual observer. I just can't do it."
But I admire your restraint, your discipline.
I don't have I don't have no more room. We're running out of space in the house. It's to the point now, when I finish a build, I actually have to put it back in the box until I can purchase a new shelf to fit
Uh,
all of the new builds. Cause yeah.
some of the worst issues to deal with in modern times.
Truly,
Mental
truly
space.
first world problems.
Yeah, yeah, don't get me started.
But no, man, thank you so much. Like I said, this was a long overdue conversation, and I'm just so happy that we finally got to pick your brain and kind of share your experience with Gundam and and with LEDs. For everyone watching, obviously links down in the description. Go follow PK on YouTube and Instagram. Definitely check out that video coming up Friday. And am I missing any major announcements? Obviously, Gundam Explained show tomorrow. And
Yep.
yeah, again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us in chat. Hope you guys have a great rest of your evening.
All right.
Irvin, PK, is there anything you want to say before we sign out?
Um, I want to thank you guys for having me. This was fun.
Oh,
I
thank
kind
you.
of stayed away from from doing this type of stuff like when I got involved with modeling, but it's fun. It's actually a lot more fun and you know, and I guess I you don't want to trap yourself in a silo to where you're just by yourself constantly.
Yeah.
And Irvin, 5 years ago, you couldn't get me to believe otherwise. But I see the benefits of just learning from others and
Yep.
being able to talk to other people. It's a very great thing.
I think there's a time for monk mode, and then like Nick always says, like Coop from Undergated says, like iron sharpens
Honest.
iron, and you're only gonna improve by interacting with other people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. All
uh,
right.
but yeah, thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great rest of your
Thank you.
evening, and we will catch you later.
All right, Steven. All right, Adam.
All right. See y'all.